What's going on, guys? My name is Julian Jung. I am the host of the Blockchain Brief, where every episode we are interviewing innovators and founders in the blockchain and crypto space. Today, I'm extremely excited to have John Lyotier, the founder and CEO of RightMesh. John, it's great to have you here, and welcome to the Blockchain Brief.
My pleasure, and great to be here again.
I know we had a little fire alarm fiasco right before this, so I'm glad that we're able to do it. Cross your fingers that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So, John, would you mind quickly kind of introducing yourself, giving a little background on your team and sort of how you went down, how you ended up starting this project?
Sure. So myself and my co-founder, Chris Jensen, started the company back in 2010. We built the company on the whole concept that a company built in good culture and good values would attract good people. We didn't really know what we were going to build at the time. We just thought if we assembled a great team, they'll be able to build something kind of cool and special. Excuse me. So the team itself consists of about 110 people spread across 2 continents. We have a very large team in Bangladesh, mostly application engineers and specialists. And basically, we've taken our entire team and said, learn blockchain, because that's really where we knew the future was going to be. But we also have a team of about 40 people in Vancouver, Canada, where we have our mesh networking scientists, some PhDs in this space that are operating on our systems, some distributed systems engineers, our product team with UI, UX, and of course our corporate finance group as well. So large team, sustained by an existing business. We have existing operations that have been profitably paying for this project for a while, and now we're off and running and growing like crazy.
Very good. So talk to me a little bit about the problem that you guys are trying to solve, right? It's a very, very ambitious project. What exactly is it, and how big is this market?
So the best way to describe it is what we're trying to do is a mobile mesh networking platform and protocol. And we fundamentally believe that the world has a right to connect, to share, to access information, access things in private and secure ways. And right now, most of the communication systems are centralized. If I was to talk to you with WeChat, let's say we're in a school or somewhere in the world and we're sort of sitting next to each other. Even if we're right next to each other, the communication goes from me to the Wi-Fi router, the telecom tower, to the cloud, to the WeChat servers over in China, to the government who's listening in on the WeChat communications, all the way back down to you.
Sure.
And that communication path is unnecessary. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of power. It's not as secure. It's all those great things. And frankly, it shouldn't be done that way. We think we can solve that problem, especially in emerging markets where the connectivity challenges are not what we experience here in the West. It's in the West, we basically can have that pervasive connectivity at high speeds. In emerging markets, if they do have access to data, they turn the data on, briefly check a few Facebook messages without images turned on, turn it back off again. And the way the world connects is just not right, and we can fix that problem.
Got it. So let's talk about RightMesh, right? What is it? How does it work? And would love to have you kind of dive in a little bit about just in general, how do mesh networks work?
So the best way to think about it is that you have a hotspot on your phone, and everybody sort of understands the concept of a hotspot. If I turn my phone on and I push a magic button, and all of a sudden now my friends can connect through me and sort of either share my connectivity or at least share with each other. And from a hotspot standpoint, people get that because every phone broadcasts and receives signal, or it sends out Wi-Fi, it sends out Bluetooth, it sends out Wi-Fi direct. All that signal, you can go back and forth between devices. What we can do is actually we can combine all that signal, so I can be talking to you with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi direct all at the same time. If I'm talking to you with all those at the same time, in a hotspot-like mode, my device can now say, hey, wait a second here, I can automatically detect somebody else nearby, and while I'm talking to you with those 3, maybe I might talk to you with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but now I'm talking to somebody else on a different hotspot with Wi-Fi direct.
Got it.
And I can basically now sort of split my communication, and as soon as I can do that splitting of communication, I now can be a gateway and routing to let people hop from message to message to message to message, or device to device to device across the network.
So I think use cases for this is obviously pretty obvious, but would love to kind of hear about some of the use cases that you are most excited about for RightMesh.
Sure. I guess the obvious one is we're building an application called Flare. So we have a large application team, but Flare is what we want to use and let the world connect with in case there's an emergency, in case the systems go down. If there's a hurricane, a flood, a tornado, a here in Vegas, when they set the alarm off, they had a massive tragedy just last year, and I can understand why they're now setting up those alarms.
Yep.
But when those networks go down, when you need to communicate in those urgent matters, the networks go down, networks fail. It's a problem that's even worse in emerging markets. They don't have the infrastructure that we have here in the West. And if a hurricane or cyclone rolls through Bangladesh, entire communities are disrupted for days and days at a time. Aid can't reach those that need help. So our Flare application works when the networks don't. It can be installed on any single device and using a mesh networking protocol and letting people in those communities sort of say, I need help, or I can basically get help when I need it. But at the same time we do that, we've taken our autonomous connectivity in our mesh side, and we actually can deploy it even on a drone. We did an announcement of that last week.
Yep, I watched that video. That was really cool.
A drone can fly over an affected population, sure. And basically you send up a flare, and it says, okay, I know there's somebody in this communication at this spot here that needs help.
Wow.
That's the kind of problem we can solve. We can solve much more simple things like, I'm stuck on a train with no internet and I want to play games with the people next to me.
Got it.
You can do that as well, but it also can be facilitate communication across a refugee camp in Africa or wherever you happen to be, because they have smartphones but no connectivity infrastructure in place.
Right. Okay. And talk to me a little bit about, why did you guys decide on blockchain, and why is the mesh token important to your project?
So when we rolled out our first generation technology a few years ago, we went out to markets predominantly in Bangladesh, in Cuba, in Colombia, and markets across Southeast Asia and Latin America. And we said, we built this, what do you think? And this is kind of cool. And then we watched the user behavior for a while, and we go back and say, well, you're not sharing your internet. You're not sharing your device as a routing node. And this is sort of a single hop mesh. We didn't have the technology we have now. I said, well, yeah, I know but my internet's expensive. I only have so much data. Well, you should share it. It's good karma. It's all these different things. Yeah, I don't really know about that. So what if we paid you? Oh, yeah, of course I'll share it then. And people are motivated by self-interest. It's
sure.
The human nature that I only have so much of it, but if I can now sell some to somebody else, I would do that. And it's almost the sharing economy approach of Airbnb or Uber. If I have an underutilized resource, I'm more than willing to profit from that underutilized resource. So for us, we needed to find a way to incentivize a person for that right behavior. I want you to keep your device on and use your battery and processing power to be a routing node in the mesh. What's in it for you? Well, how about we compensate you and actually save your battery rather than that? That's a whole other conversation. I want you to share your data, share your internet. How can I do that? Let me give you a token to do that. Existing tokens were not sufficient for us to do that with. We needed to have a proprietary token that allowed us to do a lot more of the microtransactions. We've been able to take Raiden and basically bring Raiden into a mesh network environment with payment channels between users and transact entirely in an offline environment. But really from our start, we actually, less so from a blockchain standpoint, but more from our, one of the core problems we had was, how do you establish trust in an entirely offline and decentralized environment? It's the world we're living in is still relying on trust centers of ISPs and governments and Facebook and Google and all these different centralized trust sources. But in a mesh environment, if you don't connect to the internet, how do I know that you are you? And once again, a little bit by accident, we discovered that, well, there's a new thing called Ethereum, and we can use that Ethereum ID in lieu of an IP address. And that became sort of our identity layer in a mesh network. And then Ethereum became something afterwards. But we already had Ethereum baked into our very core at the very start.
Awesome stuff. And so how far along are you guys with the project now? Because from what I understand, this has been something, not a couple years in the making, but many, many, many years in the making.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw the first protocol prototype in spring of 2013. 3.5, 4 years now. Time's going by.
Sure.
The company itself was started in 2010.
Got it.
But the mesh stuff came out of the pain that a team in Bangladesh had, where the infrastructure was overloaded, and they actually built this early prototype that they wanted to give away to the universities, almost as a recruiting tool to let people share and connect across the campus without touching the internet, because they couldn't use Messenger, they couldn't use WhatsApp or Viber or any of these other tool sets. Dropbox, YouTube, all these services were blocked on campus due to bandwidth constraints. And so they built this tool. And that was the start of this journey that we've been on now for a while. Where we are is that 2 years ago, we started to re-architect from the ground up to make our own protocol and platform, and really to make it as a software development kit that any application in the world could incorporate our mesh kit, our mesh SDK, and become a decentralized offline mesh application.
Sure.
That mesh development kit was released in private beta in September of this past year. We've been working with a handful of development teams sponsoring hackathons around the world, and seeing how the developers would use our SDK. We are about to get deployed onto Ethereum testnet to show our payment channels with our micro-rated instance, and that's sort of where we are. So in the process, are in the midst of a token generating event. We heavily oversubscribed. Our pre-allocation. The sale itself starts on February 15th. But from a technical standpoint, it works. We can send data across 5 or 6 hops today at about maybe 2 megabits per second. We have a path to knowing that we can get that much faster. Our engineering group believes we can get up to 10, 15, 20 hops at upwards of maybe 100 MB per second.
Great. So that was good. Now
We're
the
good.
fire alarm is going off again.
So
this is going to get the most views because of this. This is great.
yeah, I think well at least it concluded. So going back into the emergency broadcasting side and our Flare application.
Yep.
If that was a real system, the very first thing that would go down is the emergency communications. So here we are in a facility that probably has 10,000 people in super dense environment. It would be very easy for the hotel, because I know they already have a hotel app, to have our mesh kit included in their hotel app, and now every single one of them could still communicate when the network goes down.
So you planned this alarm just because it
exactly.
Really
this is entirely planted.
Yep.
But because for us, when you have the secret to every single mesh application is density. If you need to have a mesh requires density. We basically can have a node operating between 50 to 100 meters, and so mesh doesn't work if you basically go from one side of a farmer's field 10 kilometers to the next node over here. That doesn't work.
Got it.
But in places like conference centers, hotels, schools, campuses, where you have that density, you can really facilitate that communication going at rapid speeds across. But from our perspective, we actually built the SDK and a protocol that any application can integrate our SDK for free, and then any application integrates it, every single user who has that application becomes a functioning node in the mesh. And the second application that comes in can use the density established by the first application. So if we have the hotel app installed on my phone, and then somebody wants to do a hotel hookup app, well, they can. They already have 10,000 users.
Yep.
And all that, basically, the network effect can still go. Hopefully, people would use it for much more noble cause than a hotel hookup app. But
in Vegas, it's probably a very good use case.
In Vegas, it's a very good use case. We have been talking to developers about using and creating a Tinder-like app for Saudi Arabia, because those apps are blocked. Or a Grindr-like app, so that people are looking at different things that can use with it.
Sure.
But they're also looking at it as how can we solve or get information out in case of an Ebola outbreak in Africa. So
right.
There's wide spectrums of use cases.
Of course.
And we can't build all those use cases ourselves. We have to rely on the community to go out and build the technology that it's really. If I was to assume that I knew what every single user in the world would want to do with the technology, I can't do that. I would not know what somebody in Kenya who has a small application group, what the problem that they want to solve on an everyday basis is. We have to rely on the community for that. That's why we need to get the kit out into as many developers' hands as possible and say, build this, what will you build? All the apps that we create through our team in Bangladesh, we're working on about a dozen of them right now. They all get pushed up on GitHub. They'll all be available as open source.
Can you name some of those that are being worked on at the moment?
Sure.
I'm also curious how many devices are currently using RightMesh?
So it's at this point, it's all of the apps that we built or been built through different hackathons. They're not really commercially available. They're just basically being used as testing at this point.
Got it.
But one of the apps that I think is really, really cool is an app called Dr. Easy. And really what Dr. Easy is developed for a problem in Bangladesh where you have one doctor in a local doctor's chambers supporting about 10,000 patients. And those patients have to wait about 4 hours if they want to see the doctor. They go down, they stand in line, and they wait. If they leave, they lose their place in line. And it's almost what the app is that you walk up, you scan a barcode or a little QR code, and now you get your place in line. And it's almost like a restaurant waiting alert system that your table's ready. It's kind of like that. But what they realize is that they can now let those people go back to their homes because you have those 10,000 people living in about 3 square blocks, and that doctor sees 100 patients a day from that community. 100 patients a day creates density in the mesh. After a week, you have, say, 500 people. That's enough density to cover the entire community for any other application to exist in there, whether it's a communication app, a gaming app. We're making a card game, Hearts. We're making another game called Werewolf. I'm not sure if you ever played Werewolf. It's sort of a popular party game across China and Indonesia. We're making a mesh chat application. We're making our Flare emergency broadcast application. We're making a music sync application. So if you go out to a decentralized dance party, you can actually, one person can start playing music and all of a sudden it can broadcast out across every other smartphone. We had to basically build this timing sync application to make sure that when I start broadcasting or communicating out across the mesh, can I actually time my phone to your phone to somebody else's phone? And from that perspective, what else? We're making our mesh drone. We're making a decentralized news application. A whole series of things that we've been talking about and looking at it. It's really what we challenge the team in Bangladesh to do is to identify problems that they see. Somebody who was building a blood donation app. You need basically the blood system in Bangladesh is that you need private donors for the blood. So if you have an emergency, you need to broadcast out to the network. I'm looking for A positive blood. Wow. Who here? And you need to basically route across the community nearby of how urgent the situation is. You need to get word out ASAP when there's no connectivity.
And so, what does the density right now look like for RightMesh? Right, like how many people are on it? Maybe across all countries, or if you want to sort of
it's
the country.
The usage at this point is too small to count. It's only sort of in development environments.
Got it.
The one core feature we have that we aim to have before the mesh is publicly available, which are the mesh SDK should be publicly available in March, April of this year. Is this whole concept of autonomous connectivity. So my device automatically connects to your device. And it just sort of happens. Your phone's in your pocket, my phone's in my pocket, and we now can function and communicate back and forth with each other. Until that gets out, we only really wanted to have it in development environments. So at hackathons with our team. But when we actually do launch, we will launch with a whole series of applications that include that technology to the broader market. So at this point, the density is non-existent. We are doing a pilot project in northern Canada as well, with basically about 300 homes that are within a close enough proximity to each other to communicate and share, and they have sort of one internet connection for that town of 300 homes. Wow. We're basically letting them sort of work within some of the apps that are being brought into that community to connect that community.
And so in a perfect world, what's your target look like for 2018, right? 2019, what does it look like? How many people are using this? How many people are connected? Would love to hear your thoughts around that.
We have a goal set. We're very much a goal-driven organization. This year, by 2018, we hope to have 10 million nodes in the mesh, which is a relatively small number in our opinion, because it takes one application that has 10 million users, and congratulations, you now have 10 million nodes.
Of course.
But 2018 is about trying to measure, make sure we hit the performance targets, make sure that we get the infrastructure and technology right. And then 2019 is really our growth year as far as density of users. I sort of look at it from a perspective that there's 4 billion people who are unconnected right now. There's 2 billion people who are unbanked, and we can make a difference in their lives completely. Our target is to have 1 billion nodes in the mesh, whether that's from a smartphone or an IoT device. And I think we will be well on our way to hitting that goal in 2019. But I also think that if we can solve a problem for two people, that makes the world a better place. We always keep on saying is that if we can solve a use case that solves the pain of two people, we've done our jobs. And if that network gets better by introducing a third person into the mix, then it just has a chance to improve from there. In an ideal environment, that right now you have 5 million crypto wallets that are out there. Every single mesh node that we create, because we have an Ethereum ID at our core, it basically creates a crypto wallet by default. And we're about to bring 1 billion people into crypto who've never had idea. And in fact, they probably won't even know that by using their mesh network and starting to earning tokens across the mesh for doing that right thing, that they are even in crypto. They'll just sort of happen. And I'm writing on a blog post right now, quoting Tracy Chapman, who says, talking about a revolution, it starts with a whisper. And the whole idea that this revolution of connectivity, of communication, of banking, of all that stuff that is undergoing and happening right now, people aren't going to know what's happened. It's just going to happen.
Right.
And it's not going to be this convoluted process of signing up with a Coinbase account and getting an exchange and setting up a public-private key and these offline cold storage wallets and blah, blah, blah. When a person doesn't even have a bank account, they're just going to have their smartphone, and that smartphone is going to contain their identity and wallet and crypto, and they just have earned by passively being, and then they have it. And then if you look at what they can spend their tokens on, it's things that don't have to be brought back into fiat. It's you spend it on connectivity, you spend it on games, which is digital, you spend it on apps, which is digital, spend it on entertainment, which is digital, and all that that revolution that will sort of transform the economic system, that transform the political system, that will transform human rights around the world, will just happen. And that's what I kind of like about this whole thing.
John, this is a really, really incredible project. So if people want to get in touch with you or learn more, what's the best way to reach out?
Best way to reach out is on rightmesh.io. That's RIGHT, not right as in penmanship, but right as in being the right thing to do. The parent company is called Left. We say we do things right. So rightmesh.io, we can join us and have some great conversations on our Telegram channel, or follow along on Twitter and some of those things. But those links are all on that website. Love to chat and share our story. We're passionate about what we do, and anybody who wants to get involved in the project, we'd love to have them.
Perfect. John, thank you so much again for being here. We really look forward to tracking the progress. So looking forward to it.
My pleasure. And sorry about the fire alarm.